Hello everyone, welcome back to the 10-day HTML journey series. Today is day 2 and we are going to explore essential HTML elements. In the previous session, we took a look at what HTML is and basic structure of the HTML document. And in this session, let's start using HTML as quickly as possible so we can learn how to write our own code and start creating websites with it. Let's get started by learning about one of the most important elements, the heading element. And this is what a heading element looks like. It starts with an opening tag here and ends with a closing tag. Now if you look closely, the opening and the closing tag actually have one thing that's different, and it's this forward slash right here. And that is what makes this a closing tag. And what goes in between these two tags is the content of that particular element. So in this case, what we are saying is we want to create a h1 heading, and what the heading is going to contain is hello world. Now you heard me talking about HTML tags, but we are actually talking about the heading elements. So what exactly is the difference? Well, the tag refers to these bits. These are tags. Anything that's inside an angular brackets. We call these as a tag. And they have different names. So as I mentioned, this one is the opening tag and this one at the end is called the closing tag. Now these are the tags. What's an element? Well, the entire thing here, this is an element. That includes opening tag, closing tag as well as the content. This is the HTML element. And these parts are the tags. So I hope you understood the difference between the tags and elements. Let's see what is the actual purpose of these heading elements. The idea comes from the content or the index page. If you create a book and you create a table of contents like this one, you will see that there's a sort of hierarchy. You have got the top level heading here. This would probably be a main heading, and then the subheadings or sections. There's even another level sections from 1.1 which goes into more detail about section 1. These levels are what we get to define using our HTML headings. This is what the code would look like for all 6 levels of headings. And remember that there is no heading 7. There is no such thing as an H7 that does not exist. Here you have got an open tag which is H1 or H6, and you have got a closing tag with the same number. Now if you write a tag like this with an H1 and then you end with a different one like H6, then that's not going to work either. Okay, let's see how this will look if we run it. If we run the code, this is what we get. We got different heading levels, and by default they would be styled to have different sizes. So heading 1 being the biggest and heading 6 being the smallest. We can of course further style this later on, but as soon as we type these headings, it just gives us an indication of our levels to make sure that we have written all our code as intended. The level 1 headings are the biggest and the level 6 headings are the smallest. So now that we have seen the HTML heading elements, the next one we are going to learn about is the paragraph element. And this is also related to formatting and putting text on our websites. This is what a paragraph element looks. And it is similar to the heading element. You have got the opening tag and the closing tag, and in between you have got the content that is going to be your paragraph. Now the reason why we need a paragraph tag is because if you just had plain text in your HTML document. When you run the code and you see it on the website, what you will see is something like this. The text, they run into each other onto the same line, and you cannot actually tell where one paragraph begins and where the other ends. On the other hand, if we had created two paragraph elements for these two lines, then when we run the code, you will see them being separated with a line in between the two different paragraphs. Here is the tip for you. When creating a website or practicing web development, one of the biggest challenges is filling in text content while designing a layout. Now, instead of typing random words or copying text from somewhere else, you can generate Lorem Ipsum. Lorem Ipsum is a placeholder text or simply a dummy text. You can generate Lorem Ipsum instantly in VS Code with a simple shortcut. If you need a single paragraph of dummy text, simply type Lorem and hit enter. This will generate short paragraph of placeholder text. If you need multiple paragraphs, just use Lorem asterisk 2. This will generate two paragraphs automatically. You can replace 2 with any number based on how many number of paragraphs you need. If you want to control the word count, it means if you need a particular number of words, then you can type Lorem 10, for example. This will generate exactly 10 words of Lorem Ipsum text. Alright, now we are going to learn all about the HTML void elements, such as the horizontal rule and the break element. What exactly are void elements? Well, we have seen what non-void elements are, such as the paragraph element or the heading elements, and they are not the void because they have content right here in between. A void element is an element where we cannot put any content inside the tag. Here is the horizontal rule tag. This is used to add a horizontal line between paragraphs or any tags. So here you can see we have got our previous two paragraphs, and right in between the two paragraphs I have added a horizontal rule which will help us divide the content to show that this part is not related to this part. And when we view it on a web browser, this is what we see: paragraph 1, paragraph 2, and then this horizontal rule or a horizontal line. The horizontal rule is not only the void element, another common one is the break element, and it looks like this. Now, how does the break element work? Well, it's really useful when you have things where you need to separate things onto separate lines in order to have the correct meaning. For example, if you have poems, they are in fact meant to be in the same paragraph, but they should really each be on different lines in order to make the rhyming work or in order to make the structure of the poem correct. So this is a poem, and in order for it to work, we can't have it all done in one line. Even if it's in the same paragraph, if we had this code right here, it is all in the same paragraph. It is all related to each other, and this does make sense, but you don't look at poetry like this. It doesn't really work. We don't know where we are supposed to breathe and how we are supposed to read out the poem. So instead, we can add our break elements that we just learned about. Our void elements doesn't have any content in it, but it just shows where breaks in this paragraph has to go in order for this poem to look right. And when this HTML document is rendered, this is what you will see: a perfect layout for a poem, and it's all beautifully formatted by break elements that we have added at the end of each line. So we have come to the end of day 2 session, and here is the task of day 2, my favorite foods list. In this task, you will practice using heading elements, paragraphs, line breaks, horizontal rules, and dummy text. Simply create an HTML file, use different types of headings, write descriptions inside the paragraph using the lorem, use horizontal rule and line breaks. Here is a sample output for the task. It's not necessary to create the exact output, but make sure to create a similar one while using all the topics discussed in today's session. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. Happy coding.